Samus Aran has returned in Metroid Prime 4 after 18 years of absence. This is a direct sequel to Metroid Prime 3 Corruption, released in 2007, and this is coming out on the Switch 2 and Switch 1 as of December 4th, 2025. Now, in this review, we're going to be covering every single detail of Metroid Prime 4, and that includes spoilers. We will be doing spoilers toward the end of the review, and I will be warning you when the spoilers will be coming, so don't worry about that. But I want to make it clear that the big spoilers will be the Lamorn and the ending of the game, and all the characters and Samus and Sylux, all that will be discussed at the end of the review, because I have to give you my thoughts on that. This is a full featured review. And also keep in mind that Nintendo themselves has already revealed pretty much all the areas of the game in their promotional material, and they revealed all the beams and the suits in the game, even in their promotional material, including on their Japanese site. So pretty much everything is fair game in this review, besides maybe the spoilers that we will say towards the end, just in case people don't want to be completely spoiled on the story aspects of this game, and even my own speculation on some of the aspects of the story of where it could be going in the future for possible Metroid Prime 5 and 6 sequels to Metroid Prime 4. So first of all, to get to know Metroid Prime 4, you have to really get to know Metroid Prime 3, which Nintendo did not re-release on Switch 2 before Metroid Prime 4 was released. They did not even release Metroid Prime 2, they only released Metroid Prime 1 Remastered. So if you have no idea about Metroid Prime 2 or 3, then you will be coming into this unprepared, possibly, for the narrative aspects of Metroid Prime 4, all the dialogue, and just more story-heavy focus that the game has, since Metroid Prime 3 does the exact same thing. But this is actually an evolution from Metroid Prime 3, and in fact, I do believe Metroid Prime 4 has less dialogue in the beginning of the game at least, versus Metroid Prime 3 to get you going and put you into that Metroid Prime atmosphere, which the game does an amazing job of doing right off the bat. So when Metroid Prime 4 begins, we are greeted with a series of text talking about how Sylux, a bounty hunter, and his army of space pirates launched a series of attacks on the Federation research facility on the planet Tanamar, with the speculation that the space pirates are being controlled by Metroids and have the ability to fuse with other life forms and control their minds, which of course is being led by Sylux. But not only that, but Sylux's ship was seen to be following Samus and basically spying on her at the end of Metroid Prime 3. And then in Federation Force, Sylux went into a Federation base and stole a Metroid hatchling. So when Sylux attacks this Federation research facility, they are going after a specific artifact that the Federation is guarding, and they need Samus to help them. But the motivation as to why Sylux hates Samus and the Federation is unclear at this point. There's lots of speculation about that. But interestingly enough, we will talk about that later in the spoilers section of the game with the ending and everything, because it does appear we do know now the motivation as to why Sylux hates Samus. So if you want to go in blind and find out for yourself, you want to play the game on your own, then you want to avoid the spoiler section for that. But we do pretty much know why at this point, and we'll be talking about it much later in the review. So when you take control of Samus and land on Tanamar, everything feels very much at home, like a Metroid Prime game. You're jumping right into the action and get you familiar with the controls, the aiming, the dashing, and the morph ball, bombs, and missiles, of course. You do all these things in the first 10 minutes of the game, which is a much better start, I would say, than Metroid Prime 3, which got things rolling very slowly and had the player pretty much talking to NPCs the entire first hour or so of the game. Quite a bit of a slower pace in Metroid Prime 3, which they do a much better job of here in Metroid Prime 4, I would say. And you will notice right off the bat that every single NPC in this game, Metroid Prime 4, does have fully voiced dialogue, and they all have multiple sentences to say to Samus if you choose to talk to them. So this is also similar to Metroid Prime 3. So yet again, new players who come into this game blind, only playing Metroid Prime Remastered on Switch 1, you could be in for a shock as to how much of a more story-focused and voiced game this is, as far as how they're telling the story aspects of the campaign. But when you go into the actual Metroid Prime experience, that's where the gameplay becomes more isolated and a lot less talking, in fact even no talking, for most of your playtime in these Metroid Prime games, including Metroid Prime 4 and Metroid Prime 3. So when Samus finally meets Sylux for the first time in Metroid Prime 4, he has the space pirates and Metroids with him, and there's a big disaster that happens because Sylux tries to shoot Samus. Samus jumps out of the way of the artifact that the Federation and her are there to protect, and of course the artifact gets knocked over, and then it activates and causes a gigantic explosion of energy and transports and or destroys a lot of the people there, including Samus. And if you look very closely, the artifact actually looks like it touches Samus first, which may explain why Samus is then teleported to the alien race known as the Lamorn in their tower called the Chrono Tower, and she awakens there. And it's very mystical and almost like magical. Seemingly she's in some type of different dimension, and that's where she receives these psychic powers for the first time. And then she's introduced to the last surviving Lamorn named Chatoyant Valoon.
Ilante, Enkia Chatoyant Valoon, Halas Nachakam Saban Lamorn, Chiola, Shadi Hara. Shiatim Akuntim Tare, Ish Lamorn Kiplena.
They refer to Samus as the chosen one who's going to save what's left of their race and preserve it, and by doing that, they need to give Samus the ability to have psychic powers, which will allow her to find the 5 different keys scattered about planet Viros, which will let Samus activate the Master Teleporter, which will allow her to leave the planet and go back to either planet Tanamar like we assume or somewhere else. And then Chatoyant gives Samus more direction, telling her to go and meet them at the temple, which is located in the area of planet Viros called Fury Green. And then comes a very, very important part of the game, one of the most important parts of the game that people really need to pay attention to if you're playing this for the first time, and what I think that many reviewers who reviewed this game may have actually not really taken seriously or not really pay attention much in this part, because this is the main motivation coming up as to why Samus is even there doing the work, so to speak, for the Lamorn, so they can carry their lineage off to another planet, and they explain why right here.
Shadi Haram, Ila, Dinji Te, Asla. Dinji Galan. Algodina, Lamorn Halas, Indanish Gathalate, Sadebelek, Anchandigas. Galis. Shitsanate, Naranaka. And Celine, Sadebelek. Galanshe, Chitsana, Shakatun Adebelek, Great Galanshe, Galanshe Kigatha, Shadi Haram, Iskaladan Gedishakam, Siatin Virus, Kaladan Gedishakam, Sihalashast, Esh Sakalare, Ashadi Haram, Intendina Galanshe.
So we see here that Chatoyant Valoon was very clear to Samus, saying that she really needs to be collecting these green crystals and then coming back to the temple and depositing those crystals to fill up the altar of legacy, and then the crystals will be transported to the gigantic tree towering above them called the Sacred Tree. And then after enough crystals are deposited throughout the adventure, the tree will then sprout a memory fruit that Samus will then need to take with her when she teleports out of planet Viros when the mission is completed. That is all part of the same mission that the Lamorn race is requesting of Samus as the chosen one, which is why they gave her these psychic abilities in the first place, so Samus could save them and save their legacy. It's not just about Samus trying to escape planet Viros, it's about the motivation as to why she's being chosen with psychic abilities, and in turn, she will then be able to escape planet Viros on top of that. So this is a very important story aspect as to why Samus is doing this in the first place, besides looking for Sylux possibly as to what was going on with the artifact. So if the player understands the importance of these green crystals, more than likely will be looking for them throughout your adventure, correct? I would say yes. Now, this is exactly what I did when I played the game. So for me, when I played Metroid Prime 4, I was constantly looking for these green crystals. Pretty much no matter where I was in this game throughout my entire playthrough, I was always aware that I need to be looking on the side at least, or wherever I was, to keep an eye out for these green crystals. Now, of course, going back to where you first appear in Fury Green, the first area of the planet Viros that you're teleported to, this is actually where the real Metroid Prime experience begins. But I did want to make it clear what the entire motivation, at least in the beginning of the game, is for Samus to even be there and to be helping the Lamorn. But when you start out in the first area of the game in Fury Green, you're introduced to what a Metroid Prime game is, pretty much. And this was what Retro Studios was likely doing to show exactly what type of game this truly is versus how the game started on planet Tanimar, kind of getting your feet wet with the controls and showing you all the aspects of what you can do in the game, and then taking the powers away from you once you go and transport to planet Viros. You're left without most of your abilities, just like in a regular Metroid game and Metroid Prime game. So when you start on Fury Green, you can tell right away that Retro Studios really is trying to put a focus on atmosphere. The atmosphere in this game is a 10 out of 10. It might be an 11 out of 10. The atmosphere is absolutely incredible in Metroid Prime 4, and the graphics match that as well, and the art design completely is through the roof. The art design that Retro Studios has crafted for this game is some of the best that you're ever going to see in the industry. They put so much time and effort into the little details. Every little detail seemingly has been accounted for in this game, and it's on full display in Fury Green. It looks absolutely gorgeous and breathtaking. You have these breathtaking vistas looking way out into the distance. You can see all the lush trees and mountains and the insect-like creatures and little bird-like creatures that are flying around. It looks so graceful and just very detailed. You have all the water moving, the wind blowing, the beautiful music playing. You have all the aspects there that make a Metroid Prime game feel at home, especially for players who are familiar with Metroid Prime Remastered. It has that slight similar feel to Talon 4 with Fury Green. Now, if you're already a Metroid fan, likely you already know what I'm talking about, but if you're a first-time player, no doubt this is going to grab you in terms of its atmosphere and pull you right in. That's exactly what these games do very well. Retro Studios and their development team are experts at mastering the art of atmosphere and actually pulling the player into their world and making you feel swept away in their vision and art design that they have in these games. So this is a fantastic and beautiful way to start the game, and you're greeted with various other things where you're walking through Fury Green in these dark cave-like forest parts of the area. Looks very, very nice, very atmospheric, like I said. It's very difficult not to enjoy it. It looks that pretty and sounds that good. And then you're introduced to Myles McKenzie, who is the engineer who also crashed or appeared there basically on planet Viros, along with other Federation officers as well that you'll come in contact with. Personally, I don't have a problem with Myles McKenzie whatsoever, and as we'll discuss later on in the review, his role in the game is actually very, very important, and his personality is much more subdued later on, but we'll discuss that. So then after you rescue Myles from the attacks from the Grievers, these creatures that are indigenous to planet Viros, Myles McKenzie then accompanies you to the temple that you already were going to, and he offers some help because he's very smart and good with computers, and he can actually help Samus do some upgrades with her suit and beams. He's also trying to help him think of ways to make things easier for Samus so they can get off the planet in a safe way. So then once you reach the temple on Fury Green, you then talk to the aforementioned Lamorn hologram of Chatoyant Valoon, and you get those erections about the green crystals like we talked about before. And then you can go and proceed with the game from that point forward and start getting all the abilities in Fury Green. So in Fury Green, the game does a good job of giving you your basic core abilities that you need to progress, which is the Psychic Glove, the Control Beam, and the Psychic Bomb, and the Missile Launcher. You get all that in Fury Green really, really quickly. So the Psychic Glove, for example, allows you to pick up these energy orbs and move them around with your psychic powers to activate switches and doors and things like that. And the Psychic Glove also allows you to control points of movement in certain designs. For example, those orbs can be placed in objects and you can move them around with your Psychic Glove in certain patterns to open up certain areas. And the Psychic Control Beam, which is basically Samus shooting her power beam, but with using her Psychic Visor. And that's something they also give you, of course, is the Psychic Visor. You got to have that to activate your psychic powers. So the Psychic Visor allows you to shoot the control beam, and when you shoot the beam, you actually can control it with the right analog stick and left analog stick and move the beam on your own to shoot other objects to open up areas perhaps behind doors or behind walls. Again, another first for a Metroid Prime game. And then you have the Psychic Bomb, which is given to you after you beat the first main boss there in Fury Green. And that allows you to actually drop a bomb by holding down the attack button while you're in morph ball mode, and the bomb will actually levitate, and then you go into a normal stance, pick up the psychic bomb and move it around like a regular orb at that point. But then the psychic bomb will actually blow up and be able to activate other switches for you, and you can do that all on your own with the morph ball and the psychic bomb, as long as the objects are compatible with it that you're actually trying to open. Yet again, another first for a Metroid Prime game, but not too dissimilar from a Zelda game. I do believe Skyward Sword and other Zelda games had similar mechanics that they used in those games as well, but this is definitely a first time for Metroid Prime, and the way Metroid Prime games play are a lot different from Zelda games. So this is actually very, very positive, I think, and a very fun gameplay mechanic that the game introduces, and the game does make very good use of these psychic abilities as you move on through the game. So after you get these abilities and you get your missile launcher, you're then ready to leave Fury Green, and your next destination is Volt Forge. And this area, let me tell you, is one of the most amazing areas of the game because it's designed in very specific layers, all spread out, and heavily designed to be used with Viola, the futuristic motorcycle that you're going to be getting and using for the bulk of the game for transportation. So you get teleported out there to Volt Forge in Soul Valley in the desert, but you're pretty much right in front of Volt Forge. But right off the bat in Soul Valley, you can see that this is a wasteland desert pretty much that you're sent to. It's very quiet and eerie sounding. In fact, the music that they do play, yes, there is music, by the way, in Soul Valley. And that's kind of like what I hear in Metroid Prime 4 in Soul Valley, that this is a very cold, dark kind of place and you're all alone. But then you go right to Volt Forge because that's your destination and you were put there. And that's when you get your first encounter with the Cybots, which are these robots that are very advanced and very dangerous and very accurate even with their shots. And they can kill you in just a few shots if you're not dodging and moving about really quickly, which is another thing we want to talk about with the controls in Metroid Prime 4. The controls are better than ever. This is the best playing Metroid Prime game of all time, easily. The most responsive, the most options. Everything about the controls feels the best in Metroid Prime 4. You have mouse controls, you have dual analog support, you have Joy-Con support. I did play the entire game with the dual analog Pro Controller 2 on Switch 2, so I did not actually play with the mouse controls, and the reason is because I found out, unfortunately, that the mouse controls do not allow for inverting your look as far as when you look up or down. I play inverted, that's how I've always played, so I went ahead and stuck with the Switch 2 Pro Controller for my playthrough, and it worked fantastic. It felt great. HD Rumble feels really good. But this is where you get the true skill test, I would say, a skill check on normal mode, because normal mode does feel quite a bit more difficult than normal mode does in a typical Metroid Prime game. This feels more like hard mode does on a Metroid Prime game. It's a much faster game in terms of combat, that you need to be doing these moves faster, basically, to avoid attacks in Metroid Prime 4, much faster than any previous Metroid Prime game. So that did catch me off guard, and it did feel more difficult because of that. And I did actually die a few times against the Cybots my first time playing, even on normal mode, because I just wasn't expecting these enemies to be so accurate with their shots. Like I said, previous Metroid Prime games, they were not very accurate at all. They would shoot you once every like 3 or 4 shots, pretty much in other Metroid Prime games. But in Metroid Prime 4, these enemies will shoot you or hit you the first time. If they actually are aiming on you and you don't move, you will get hit. So in Metroid Prime 1, 2, and 3, those enemies were not quite as accurate, and it gave you more leeway, and they didn't do as much damage on top of that. So Metroid Prime 4, I'm very happy that normal mode is more of a challenge than how the other games in the trilogy before Metroid Prime 4 presented their normal difficulty. So after defeating the Cybots and you get used to the skill check that the game does in fact give you, you enter in Vault Forge, and let me tell you something, guys. Man, the sensory overload that they give you is unmatched. This feels like a next generation Metroid Prime game through and through. In terms of comparisons to other Metroid Prime games, this is the core example, I would say, that Metroid Prime 4 tries to set the tone for the rest of the game. Fury Green is more so a reminder that this is Metroid Prime. This is something familiar, something nice and green and pretty. Vault Forge is more along the lines of a Metroid Prime 2, like Sanctuary Fortress, but amped up to the 10th degree, like way amped up, big time. And it is just absolutely amazing. Like I said, sensory overload. And then the rest of the biomes follow suit in terms of the feel of what they convey. Yes, they look different and they're designed differently in the other biomes that we're going to talk about, but Vault Forge sets the tone in terms of music direction and the overall feel of the game that you actually have going through these areas. The way the music sounds is actually carried on through the other biomes as well. And I think this is absolutely fantastic music and atmosphere that draws you into the game. I don't think, in my opinion, any other Metroid Prime game has done the atmosphere as good as Metroid Prime 4, and I never actually thought I would think that, coming from Metroid Prime 1 being my favorite game of all time. Metroid Prime 1, don't get me wrong, is an incredible game. It has incredible atmosphere, but the music direction in Metroid Prime 4, I have to say, is something else. It's just hit another note for me. I personally absolutely love the soundtrack of Metroid Prime 4. It hits all the feelings and notes that I wanted to experience and feel from a musical soundtrack in this type of game, in this type of atmosphere. And I'm saying that with 100% certainty because I've heard every single track in the game, and it is just fantastic in every single way. In fact, I don't think there's one musical track in this game that I did not like. But I don't want to get too ahead of myself. We'll go over that as we continue through the review. But suffice to say, the atmosphere of Vault Forge is absolutely amazing. Not only that, but the style of the game, in terms of the art design of Vault Forge and these other biomes we're going to talk about, is just top notch. It's a 10 out of 10. And to go along with that, you have an amazingly improved and incredibly animated Samus Aran in all her animations. You get much more of a view of Samus when she goes in and out of her morph ball into first person mode. It is just fantastic. The best they'd ever done in a Metroid Prime game. It is visually stunning graphically, and the music is equally as stunning as well. They absolutely nailed it on the presentation, graphics, and music standpoint. And the controls, the way the game plays, the way the game feels, absolutely nailed it 100% with this game. And that is just talking about the first 3 parts of the game pretty much. You got Tanamar, Fury Green, and Volt Forge. So far, the game is basically like a 10 out of 10 at this point for me if I were to rate it going through Volt Forge. But then you get Viola the bike. Now, this is where the game takes a big change, and for some people, this is where the game started to falter a bit. So you first get Viola inside Volt Forge. You don't actually leave Volt Forge for a while when you have Viola at first, and you get to actually experience riding Viola around the tracks in Volt Forge. They have a whole training section where you do all these tasks to give you the time you need to practice these abilities that Viola has in terms of what attacks you can do with Viola, and also with power sliding and boosting. All those things were pretty much put to the test for you in this kind of like training exercise that they did. And this part of the game looks really cool. It almost reminded me of what a like next generation Extreme G would look like. But yeah, definitely this is not a racing game, of course. I'm a big futuristic racing game fan. I love F-Zero. So for me, I felt right at home with Viola. And even though my first impressions of Viola when I saw the trailers was mixed, like I was confused. I didn't even know what this would be like in a Metroid Prime game, you know, riding this bike around. But any fears I had were put to rest immediately when I played with Viola. It feels great. It controls perfectly. You can pretty much accelerate right away if you hold down the R trigger button, or you can go really, really slowly if you just press up or back on the left analog stick. This comes in handy because you will be using Viola in enclosed areas in certain other parts of the game. And just let me say, of course, like I've been talking about before, the soundtrack for Viola, the song that they have for Viola's theme is really, really cool. Take a listen. So like I said, Volt Forge, Fury Green, Metroid Prime 4 at this point, amazing experience. The game is pretty much giving you these extremely high highs right here, like really high moments. And not only that, but the boss fights, pretty much every single boss fight that you encounter in this game is really well designed, very consistent, and how you're being attacked by these bosses makes a lot of sense from their standpoint, and how you attack them in turn makes a lot of sense from your standpoint to weaken them. And their patterns are very fun to learn, and they're challenging just enough that you're going to be on the brink of death a lot, and you may very well die a few times on some of these bosses, especially later on. But I'd say Metroid Prime 4 is a very intermediate level of difficulty on normal mode, as it was on previous Metroid Prime games, where the normal mode was just a lot easier than what they're providing here in Metroid Prime 4. Metroid Prime 4 has a lot more challenge. Like I said, I really appreciate that. After you beat Volt Forge, you're set out to go explore a little bit in Soul Valley, which is the barren desert, with Viola in hand. And then you go back to the very quiet and subdued, eerie music feeling from experiencing those extremely high highs in Volt Forge. The amazing music, upbeat, like you're rocking out, you know, to the music, you're grooving along with it, you're doing the Metroid Prime stuff, all the good gameplay is there. Then you go and you're set into the desert. It's almost like, you know, you're having to bring yourself down. The game is bringing you down, kind of like. So no doubt, since this is designed like this, many people probably felt that this wasn't very enjoyable to be playing with Viola in Soul Valley after they experienced such action-packed and exciting moments in Volt Forge. And personally, I felt a little bit this way myself. I felt a little bit let down from those high highs. The game was basically changing pace, and you're having to do something completely different, kind of exploring this very desolate wasteland with not much to see, seemingly, right? And not much to do, seemingly. You just don't know yet because you haven't really done much yet in this area, but it looks very barren and it sounds very quiet. I was like, I don't know if I'm liking this as much as what I just experienced, because quite frankly, how could I? Like, how could you like that as much as what you just experienced in Volt Forge? It was very hard for me to wrap my head around that as to what they were trying to accomplish there, at least at first. But that only lasted for a little bit, because right after that, I discovered that the desert area in Soul Valley is actually kind of small compared to other open world areas, especially since when you boost, you can get to one end of the other really quickly and pick up those cactuses along the way. Those cactuses will automatically refill your boost to the top, and you can boost again, and you can get pretty much across the entire map in less than 2 minutes. It's really not that much of an issue to travel fast around Soul Valley. And you're also trying to collect, yet again, as a reminder, all these green crystals that you're seeing in Soul Valley. Basically one main item to collect. And it's not like these other games that give you like multiple things and make them almost like a collectathon type of thing. This is not a collectathon type of game. And once I started getting the hang of Viola and doing jumps and skidding around and attacking and then finding little secrets here and there, finding these shrines, and even finding missile upgrades and other expansions, I was actually starting to have a fun time in Soul Valley. Now, since this is an open area in Soul Valley, you do start to get certain hints and suggestions by Myles McKenzie, who's back at the base. He does start to come on the radio comms and tell you where you kind of want to head in a certain direction to get your next upgrade. And in other Metroid Prime games, the games did this as well, but they would actually show you on the map where you need to go. They just wouldn't tell you how to get there. This game does the exact same thing, except that Myles McKenzie tells you verbally, but he doesn't really tell you how to get there or what to do. It's just that that certain area is where you probably need to check out next. And of course, you don't have to listen to him. You can go other places, but this is a Metroid Prime game. And despite what people may think out there, Metroid Prime games are in fact linear experiences, meaning that there is a specific order that you need to go in to get your upgrades. Metroid Prime 4 is no different. So even though I've heard out there that people complain that Metroid Prime 4 is too linear, it is in fact exactly the same amount of linear as any other Metroid Prime game, because you can't upgrade certain abilities without having other abilities first. Certain Metroid Prime games do allow you to sequence break in terms of getting other items first before other ones. But since this game just came out, I'm not quite sure of anybody who has sequence braked just yet. But I'm sure people will figure something out in terms of getting something early that shouldn't have got, find some trick in the game that we don't know about. The game just came out, and I know there's lots of sequence breaks in Metroid Prime 1 back on the GameCube, especially the original version, because you couldn't really patch that. But in Metroid Prime 3, for example, I don't recall there being many sequence breaks in that game. I've even looked some up. I didn't really find much. Maybe there is some out there. But in terms of design, these games are usually designed in a way that you need to have a certain other ability to unlock the next ability, which means you can't really do too much with sequence breaking on purpose unless you were really trying to examine how the game functions. So we'll just have to wait and see if anything comes up with sequence breaking in the future. But for now, for Metroid Prime 4, how it's played, you do need to have certain items before you can get other items, and which is a very linear type of design, and it's not purposely designed to be non-linear. If there is sequence breaking, that'll be something that fans find out, not really necessarily purposely designed that way. So moving on, once you start exploring the areas and you explore a little bit of flare pool and you find out you can't progress too far, you then find your first upgrade chip for your beam, which is the fire shot, and then you go and get your beam upgraded back at the base with Myles McKenzie. The developers could have had a fast travel type of aspect, but since you get there pretty fast from Viola, it gives you the opportunity to collect even more green crystals when you drive back to the base camp in Fury Green from any point in the map. And it comes in really handy for the end game, which we'll discuss later. But in terms of the openness of the hub world, basically of Soul Valley, I can see why they have Myles McKenzie giving the player hints as to where they need to go, because the world is large enough you actually feel like you're wasting your time by going places you shouldn't be going to. So after a certain amount of time, Myles will start to suggest the location of where you could be going next. Just like Metroid Prime 1, Metroid Prime 2, and Metroid Prime 3 did that with them telling you where to go on your map. It's one of those things where Metroid Prime has been gone for 18 years, and it's a balancing act of risking frustrating a lot of new players, but then also frustrating a lot of old players as well by telling them too much or then telling them not enough. So it's definitely a balancing act, and I think the game does a decent job of that. Personally, I didn't have a problem with it. My first time playing, this is a big enough open area in Soul Valley that if I was going the wrong way and I was spending way too much time in the wrong direction, I would feel like I'm wasting my time. And that's one thing I really don't like when I play games. I don't like wasting my time doing things that give me no progress whatsoever in games. So yes, I understand that getting lost in a Metroid game is part of the fun. Simply wasting your time because you're in the completely wrong area and not actually trying to figure out a puzzle, that's different. I think wasting my time is not a good thing, but trying to figure out a puzzle and being like lost of where to go in a like puzzly area in a Metroid game, I think that's fun, yes. But as far as it just guessing of where I need to go next, that can become a big time waster, and I could see why Myles McKenzie is there to give you just a hint of the area that you may want to go check out next. So as you're exploring Soul Valley and these biomes, you're going to be finding these upgrade chips for your beam, and Myles McKenzie will give you all the different elemental type of beams that you can think of. You got your fire, you got your ice, you got your lightning, all those things that you would expect from a Metroid Prime game. Those are the type of beams that you will be getting in Metroid Prime 4, and they're really, really good. And of course, each of those beams, I call them beams, are really just like alternate fire options for your beam because they each have ammo, and which is something I kind of like because that shows some very good respect for one of my favorite games of all time, which is Metroid Prime 2, which had the ammo system for the light and dark beams. So that does return here a little bit, and the cool thing though is that basically they use a combination of the ammo system from Metroid Prime 2 and what they did with the Annihilator beam. So the Annihilator beam was the last beam of the game in Metroid Prime 2, and that beam used both light and dark ammo and not just multiple different types of ammo. So that's the same principle they have here for Metroid Prime 4. You have one ammo system which will work for all your different types of fire abilities, for fire, ice, thunder, what have you. But your missiles are still something completely separated, and those also can be upgraded to super missiles as well. So that is a real cool balance of mixing Metroid Prime 2 and Metroid Prime 1, and even a little bit of Metroid Prime 3 in terms of the beams, because you do pretty much have one beam, but you're not actually changing the beam completely, right? So it's one beam with alternate fire methods on the beam. It almost seems like you're using multiple different types of beams like in Metroid Prime 1, but really it's all stacking onto one beam like in Metroid Prime 3. So in typical Metroid Prime fashion, after you come out of having those big areas where you just got a bunch of upgrades, you then have the ability to go back to your previous areas and get other upgrades that you may have missed, like missile expansions or other areas with your bomb or psychic abilities that you got. You can actually unlock them now in previous areas. So I did go drive around in Viola and went back to Fury Green and got some other upgrades after I did Vault Forge and after I explored Soul Valley a bit. After you do all the exploring that you need, you then are able to go to the next areas, and then you start to meet more of the Galactic Federation troopers, including one officer named Reger Tokabi. He's basically like a sniper shooter, and he saves you when you are in the ice belt when you first meet him from getting attacked by those snow wolves.
never thought I'd meet the legendary bounty hunter, Samus.
In a place like this. Corporal Reger Tokabi, Fed Sniper, Herc Unit Delta. It's good to finally cross paths with you, but tell me, where are we? We were deep in gunfire. I lost visuals, then woke with a busted comms unit and a leg to match.
And by the way, Ice Belt is another fantastic biome. And yet again, the graphics and music are just absolutely mind-blowing in that level as well. This game, like I said, is a sensory overload in terms of its biomes. They just absolutely nail it and hit it out of the park. It's something I really, really enjoy about Metroid Prime games is the music and the atmosphere and the graphics and the attention to detail. And this game just continues to prove itself over and over and over again with Retro Studios at the helm, basically showing off at this point in the game how good they are at designing these levels and making the games so atmospheric and sound so amazingly good when you play them. And in Icebell in particular, they really nailed the very cold, chilling atmosphere that the game tries to give you here. They just absolutely nailed it. Just take a look at this. And then later on, you get into this generator room in Icebelt. And when you turn the power on, guess what? The graphics change and the music changes to be more lively. That's also another theme that is consistent with Metroid Prime 4. These biomes have multiple different high quality, very catchy, very well done music tracks. They have very different levels of ambience, from low energy, medium energy to high energy, and they did a fantastic job here. So when you turn the power generator on in this area in Icebelt, the music kicks up a notch and you're just right in there just loving every minute of it.
Hey, you got the power back on. Rendezvous up top and we'll talk next steps. message came through the station radio while you were gone. Somebody named Specialist McKenzie, he sent over the coordinates for base camp, so I'll be on my way soon. Now, I've been on a lot of missions. This has always protected me. May Solon light your path. You go on ahead. There's a healing pod up here, and I'll be as good as new in no time.
But yet again, you meet the Federation Trooper Tokabi, and he also gives you a teleporter chip that he finds that you also can give to Myles McKenzie. And then Myles is actually able to make a teleporter patch for Samus to use when you go searching for mech parts, because these pieces of mech parts that are all around Soul Valley are very, very important for the end game as well, that you need to collect. Because earlier in the game, Myles discovers that his big mech, his golem mech that he has, this gigantic towering mech, is damaged, and in order to repair it, he needs to find these other pieces of mech parts that are scattered across the world, so they can then use to take down the Chrono Tower force field. So later on in the game, the team can enter that once Samus has all the keys for the master teleporter. So once Tokabi gives you the teleporter chip, then you're able to go and actually search for these mech parts throughout Soul Valley. And once you put your teleporter patch on the mech part will then be teleported directly to Myles back at the base camp in Fury Green. And then he can directly put the mech part to use and put it on to the big golem mech, which he's named Betsy in the game. So now you have even more reason to go and search and explore Soul Valley with Viola to get these mech parts. And on your way, you can then, of course, continue to mine or basically collect as many of the green crystals as you possibly can, because yet again, remember, these are very, very important for the end game. And like I said, the game tells you very clearly how important they are for the memory fruit. While doing this, though, while you're searching the areas, you're going to actually come across and run into, after you've met Tokabi, you're going to be actually running into him quite a bit regularly in Soul Valley.
Samus, nice to see you again.
And he's going to be talking to you about his personal beliefs. He's actually a very religious person. He has this very important pendant that he has for good luck that watches over him. And he continually explains that to you as you come in contact with him with Samus. And it's actually quite good, I would say, and possibly even hinting at some interest that Samus has in this guy, because he's also a loner, and he admits to Samus that he finds more comfort talking to her than other people. So that is a pretty interesting character development they have between Samus and Tokabi. Even though Samus doesn't speak, it is implied that she is enjoying her time spending with him, sitting down and visiting with him, and possibly even sharing some personal things between each other. At least from Reger's point of view, he's sharing a lot of his personal things with Samus, and they're becoming closer throughout the game here. And it's something we're going to touch on later at the end of why that relationship is important to the development for the character with Samus. So then it's time to fully explore Flare Pool, which is basically like the Magmore Caverns of Metroid Prime 4, but definitely with a really cool musical theme. Great graphics, of course. Very, very consistent. Very, very good music in this level as well. Some pretty difficult droid enemies that you do fight here that will give you quite a bit of damage and a hard time. So one interesting note about Flare Pool is that the Lamorn actually built the facilities inside the volcano to extract green energy from the lava there in order to store it in large shells and then fire that into Soul Valley using energy diffusion. And basically they were trying to revitalize their life with using that green energy. That's the purpose of Flare Pool and all those factories there. But this is also where you meet Sergeant Ezra Duke and Nora Armstrong. Sergeant Duke is like the leader guy of the Federation officers. He's pretty much giving the orders, and he's always trying to keep Nora Armstrong in line pretty much because she's a little bit overzealous of liking Samus a bit too much, you could say.
It's amazing. I love it. I love it so
Private.
much. Yes, sir. Right. Sorry, sir. Private First Class Nora Armstrong. It's an honor to meet you, Samus.
Thank you. Samus would like to move the clamp here. Seen anything that'll do the trick?
Maybe, yes. I can't decipher the text, but I think this device here is an electromagnetic conduit, and it's connected to the clamp. So we just need to get it spinning and build up a charge.
Nice work, Armstrong.
Thank you, sir. This is where you come in, Samus. But, you know, I am here if you need anything.
Yes, Samus can handle it.
Yes, sir.
I need you with me. Patrolling.
Yes, sir.
We'll canvass the area. Who knows what'll happen when the clamp disengages.
The strength of Nora Armstrong is she's very, very good with her structural knowledge and skills with vehicles, which will come in handy later on in the game as well. So everyone has their strengths here for these Federation officers. She's no different, and definitely Duke provides a nice backbone, so to speak. He's more no nonsense and more serious, while Nora Armstrong is more witty and making more comments here and there. She's not like Myles McKenzie, she's definitely her own thing. But what I do like about Nora Armstrong and all these characters is that they do show growth in the game, and later on in the game, Nora specifically shows a lot more emotional depth, even getting sad and upset and angry. So she's definitely not a one-note character. In fact, none of these characters are. Myles McKenzie actually shows a lot of variance himself, acting a little bit more seriously, taking things a little bit differently later on in the game. A lot of these characters make a really big first impression on Samus, I'll be honest with you, and then they kind of just simmer down and become normal people pretty much. A lot of them are just surprised and happy to see Samus, and that's it. And then they go about and doing their mission and going about doing their work. And that's exactly what we see here with characters like Nora Armstrong and Myles McKenzie. Certain characters like Duke and Tokabi are already pretty much in their roles already when you meet them. They're not extremely going crazy and excited to see Samus. They're just kind of there, but they're not overly emotionally tied to seeing Samus. It is nice to see them progress and get used to the fact that Samus is there to help them. And they don't make too much of a big deal about it from there forward. They're more so focused on the job at hand and the high stakes that are involved that do affect them emotionally too. And then later on you meet your final group member, which is Vu 995. He is actually a mech that joins the team, a good mech.
Scanning for hostiles. Greetings, Samus Aran. You have a new suit. I am View 995, Galactic Federation Golem Pilot. Pleasure to make your acquaintance. I am not receiving signals from the Federation base. Perhaps we are out of range. I will accompany you.
And he wants to help Samus, and he's used as brute force to break down walls that Samus can't reach, and he's used just in a limited fashion a few times here and there. But he does remind me of the same mech that you use as kind of like your buddy, your friend in Titanfall 2, which is another great game. Similar type of vibe. Another fun character, nothing too substantial there as far as what that mech does with this character development. It's more so focused on Nora Armstrong, Duke, Myles, McKenzie, and Tokabi as the main characters that get more character development. So after doing more exploring and getting more upgrades, you get basically your standard Metroid Prime abilities that you would expect. You get another beam, you get the spider ball, you get your grapple hook, your lasso, all those things. You finally have all that stuff, but you are still missing a few key upgrades. So now that the entire team's together, you're ready to go to the big Great Mines area of the game, which is this big gigantic chasm in the ground that you go take this elevator down to. Now with the Great Mines, though, it might be confusing to see all those crystals there in the Great Mines, because you may think that that's where they're getting the green crystals from, but according to the lore, that actually is not true. The Lamorn was actually using the mines to excavate ore and then to make Viros crystals, which then allowed them to give them the ability to create the big machine era that they had, which pretty much was the catalyst of making things like Viola and that entire area in Volt Forge, which was also kind of like their downfall, right? Because of all the extreme technology took a lot of their energy from the natural resources that the planet needed. So the whole point of going to these areas, like with every area in the game, is you're trying to get these keys to give you access to the master teleporter. But also it has lots of dangerous enemies. The Great Mines are heavy on the character development between Duke and Armstrong for the team aspect. Lots more emotional weight and high stakes with the dialogue are here in this mission, and I really like that. And they did something really cool actually in the Great Mines level, which is the first time for a Metroid Prime game as far as this fleshed out is concerned. Basically, the entire level played pretty much like a scripted event, like almost like you're playing a Halo game where you have your teammates with you the entire time. There's lots of scripted events. There's lots of action. Cool thing about it, which I didn't bother me at all, is that you still had the Metroid Prime aspects in this area after the fact. After all those scripted events were done, you went back and were able to do all the Metroid Prime searching and exploring all by yourself. So it gave you two different types of gameplay experiences there. And I really liked the game branching out and telling more of an emotional, like charged, high stakes story in the Great Mines. I thought it was really well done. And I really felt like I was invested in what the characters were going through, which was a great thing for a game like this. And it's something, like I said, that Metroid Prime was going to actually need to evolve to at some point. Some people may disagree with that, but I did see that they were heading in this direction with Metroid Prime 3, and it just wasn't fleshed out enough, and it came off very flat in Metroid Prime 3, but I do think they hit it a lot better in Metroid Prime 4, and I do wish Samus would say a couple lines here and there, but she doesn't, of course. All the other characters say everything, but they did it as well as you possibly could hope for, really, for a Metroid game, and still have Samus not say anything, keep her the silent protagonist, but still showing enough emotion in her actions that she is affected by what's going on with her teammates. So after all this is done, you have the 5 keys. You're ready to go to the Chrono Tower and, put it all together, and then everyone can finally escape. Oh, wait a second. What did we forget? Oh, yes, it's the end game time. What about those green crystals? Have you been collecting them this entire time? Did you forget about the green crystals? So now we come to the part in the review where this is where a lot of other people had an issue with the game, because they actually had a hard time collecting all these green crystals, because it sounds like, from what I've been hearing from a lot of these reviews, this in-game part took them way too long, because they didn't have enough green crystals and they had to continually collect them until they finally got enough, when the game specifically told you that this was utmost importance. And for you to not do that, then of course you're not really paying attention to what the game's telling you to do. You're almost like you're shooting yourself in the foot, pretty much. So I did not do that. I had no issue whatsoever with the end game. In fact, I kind of hoped it was longer because it was over so quickly for me. I was collecting green crystals as I went naturally through, like in between each biome. I was going around with Viola and collecting the green crystals, doing the little quests with the mech parts, and still collecting green crystals as I went to go do those as well. And just everything you do with Viola, basically your goal should be to collect green crystals as you go. It takes just a few seconds. You run into them as you drive through them. You don't even have to stop. I had like 75% already collected. By the time the game said that I needed to complete the memory fruit, I basically just had to complete the shrines. And the shrines give you the extra upgrades you need for your beams. Kind of like in Metroid Prime 1 and 2, where you have the ability for your wave beam, plasma beam, what have you. And you have the same thing here in Metroid Prime 4. You have the super ability for each of the different firing aspects: ice, fire, and thunder for your elemental beam types. And the entire end game only took me about an hour to do. And I actually wanted more because the shrines are really fun, those extra shrines that you do, and come to find out that there's other upgrades in those shrines as well. It's not just for beam parts, there's also other upgrades in combination in those shrines. You might have an energy tank in there as well, you might have a missile upgrade in there as well, along with the actual beam upgrade that you're there to get in the first place. So some of these shrines you might actually go back to multiple times, because you do get the ability with your thunder shot beam to awaken these little droids called scout droids, and each one is placed in every biome, and that's optional, by the way. You don't have to do that. You can keep all the items very secret, but if you do that, which I did, it will tell you where every item is hidden in the game. And I found out that actually some of those shrines that I went to before still had some upgrades in there, like missile upgrades that I missed, that the scout droid told me where they were. So I thought that was really cool. They actually had to backtrack to the shrines as well and find the extra upgrades. Overall, I had a fantastic time doing it. It wasn't a hassle at all. And the whole reason was because I simply played the game as it was told for me to do in terms of collecting green crystals. So when it was all said and done, I was kind of sad that it was already over, because I still wanted more to do, but it was time for me to actually go and beat the game at that point, because I had 100% of the items and like 96% of the scans. It turned out that I missed a scan like really early in the game on the first boss of Fury Green, because it has a different attack, and if you miss that scan because it shoots at a different enemy, then you will miss it. But I did get 100% items. And just a couple unfortunate things that are not in this game, Metroid Prime 4, as far as suit upgrades are concerned. There was no X-ray visor. In fact, there were no other visors whatsoever. The only other visor you get is the psychic visor with your other regular visor. And that is not the norm for Metroid Prime games. Usually Metroid Prime games gives you multiple different visors. This is the first Metroid Prime game to be more like the 2D Metroid games, where they will give you like one extra visor. Like Super Metroid, for example, gives you the X-ray visor and that's it. This game gives you the psychic visor and that's it. So that is not the norm for Metroid Prime games, but that does happen somewhat with the 2D Metroid games. And they also do not give you the screw attack, and you do not have the speed boost, but they do give you the power bomb. The power bomb does make a return. Power bomb has not been in a Metroid Prime game since Metroid Prime 2, and those power bombs are extremely helpful to break up those big silver rocks that have a lot of the green crystals in them than just the regular crystals that you run over. So that's a big tip for you guys. If you have the power bomb, which is pretty much the last upgrade in the game, if you get the power bomb, make sure you use that to blow up those big silver rocks that have a lot of the green crystal. Then you'll fill up your green crystal amount in no time. I thought the mech part searching was really fun for me personally. It reminded me a lot of Mass Effect 1, when you go to those planets on your buggy pretty much. And you know, they're all abandoned planets and desolate, and you always find some kind of item there though. And basically that's what it was like. There's lots of wreckage and like broken down buildings or parts of structures that you find in Soul Valley, and those have pieces of mech parts in them usually, and you gotta do something to unlock them or find them or dig them up, or even fight bosses in the ground that come up. It's like that movie Tremors. Then you fight another boss, a mini boss in Flare Pool, which also is covering up a mech part, and that's also another fun thing to do. So a lot of great variety in the end game that I was really impressed with. It wasn't exactly like Metroid Prime 1, 2, or 3, where a lot of the upgrades were just simply finding them hidden in certain areas of the map. This game does actual gameplay mechanics differently in order to give you the reward, so to speak. So you're doing a lot of different gameplay variety, and it's something that I said specifically that I was excited for when I saw previews for this game, Metroid Prime 4, that you are going to be doing so many things with variety that it's just going to be really, really exciting. And I was right. I was extremely entertained there. I wasn't bored whatsoever. All the things you do in this game in terms of getting the different items, it's just a lot of variety and a lot to enjoy, including Soul Valley. Like I said, my first impression of Soul Valley when I just got out of Volt Forge was kind of like a letdown. But then once I got used to the gameplay loop of going back to Soul Valley after doing a big biome and collecting all the goodies out there and doing the extra missions, fighting bosses out there, the mech parts, all that combined made it for a really fun experience for me. And I did not feel like it was padded out too long. I didn't feel like I was overwhelmed by having to do too much searching for green crystals, because I did it all gradually as we led up to the final part of the game, and it worked out perfectly for me. So now it was time to beat the game, and I was kind of sad that it was going to come to an end. I couldn't believe it. I was actually going to be beating Metroid Prime 4, a game that I've been waiting for since 2007 and 8.5 years since they announced it in 2017. So suffice to say, it was like bittersweet. I'd never wanted this game to end, guys. I was so much enjoying it. Pretty much every moment of this game, I was enjoying it so much. I really did not want this game to end, and it was just an incredible experience. One more note about the end of the game. After you beat the game and the end credits and everything, the game, Metroid Prime 4, does ask you if you want to save or not save. And there was some reports out there that this was supposed to be some kind of a bad thing for Metroid Prime 4. But just remember that this is the exact same thing that they did in other Metroid Prime games. If you beat the game, it gives you the option to save or not save. And if you save, it'll be a completed save file. If you go back to that save file, it'll start a brand new game from scratch. It does the same thing in Metroid Prime 4. The only difference is they add an autosave feature. So if you select your completed save file, the last autosave will still be there, which was actually not an option in any other Metroid Prime game, including Metroid Prime 3. But the outcome is the same either way. Same with Metroid Prime 1, 2, and 3. If you go save your game, for example, at a save station, and then you go beat the game and go save your game, guess what? You just have a completed save file and you can't go back to where you last saved. But if you choose not to save after you beat the final boss in any Metroid Prime game, 1, 2, 3, and 4, it'll still take you back to the last actual save room that you had saved if you click no instead of yes at the very end of the game. So Metroid Prime 4 is no different whatsoever. What they did do is add a autosave to your save file. So that's the only difference. So you can actually go back and load up your autosave, but that still takes you to the very end of the game anyway, so there's actually no point in doing that. So basically, it's the exact same across the board. The outcome is the exact same for every single Metroid Prime game. If you want to have your game be preserved as far as not beating the game yet, and you still have some other items to get, make sure you copy your file over to another save file, just like how you need to do with Metroid Prime 1, 2, and 3. It's the exact same method, guys. Nothing has changed. Next up, we're going to go into the spoiler section. So I want to warn you all right now. We're first going to do the Lamorn full story spoilers. As far as everything that happens to the Lamorn in the story, we're going to cover it here. So if you don't want to know about this, make sure you don't listen to this part, or skip ahead in the video to the end to my final thoughts. And the same applies for the end game story spoilers with Sylux and the ending, everything like that. But we're going to cover it here because understanding the story now for myself, I do believe that this story is probably the best in the entire series, and it sets things up for a possible sequel. So first off, for the Lamorn, they are a species or a race of tragedy, I would say. Their entire race and existence was built on bettering themselves and, creating this very much heavy reliance on machinery. You could say, like, they had this big machine age, like we talked about earlier when they created Viola, and the entire Volt Forge area was all their machine-powered AI, so to speak, that was powering their entire world at one point, taking so much resources, though, that it destroyed their planet of all the natural resources. So let's take a look at the actual lore from the Lamorn themselves talking about what happened to Samus in holograms and in actual video recordings that Samus discovers in the ice belt. So take a look at this and then we will discuss.
Asentath Sukesh, Lamorn Iskalam, Kitamin Shevalex, Ashar Karukaru, Sistana, Asamen, Okajak Jateniji, Sazak Shokan, Kisaichan, Kitalatin Isklet, Kazatin Hazah, Sistana, Asaman Gabana, Asnich Shenath, Din Castellante, Shisaranaka, Avatar Chitrath. Din Shalet Titanta, Planet Lamorn, Nasta Salam, Takanich, Shazah Ragath, Iskalam, Neshatasek Salam, Analich, Kantin Kabam, Gusane, Chiola Shata Salam Lamorn, Chiola Sosan, Taraji, Sisatel, Kinara Panagesh Osamate, Fantalit Sagashaden, Din Sakula Gamad, Kielakastin Alem. Fishana Akazan, Karan Tek, Tunakel Salesh, Sake Lamor, Jataneth Dongeti Salesh, Etelam Madenat, Gadlata, Lamor Kasaladich, Tunakel Salesh, Asakarich Sustelamak, Tingashulath, Malda Tekanich Zanstelen, Sustelanaka, Din Libasil. Musanich, Kitalajin, Malta to Kingdom, Geti Selesh, Zalsveden, Chatsaga, Bashalan, Delentico Salate, Virus, Klashanich, Din Salam, Zahel Atris, Tangalatin Sasek, Jakam Galet, Pamas Lamor, Malta Tekanich, Geti. Kaladich. Osman, Shugameth, Brazil.
Kishenta nakanes planeteta sanjum krishesh. Etali chan nakanet, etali asnitik echulet salam. Chasanel tendana kalakash, Andelina senetel sajakisanet, ash. Teklina ganath, Dan, Kit, Nashanich, Aneth. Nakanesita Senjin Krishet Sultan, Penanta Senagin, Mentala Saik Shotoya, Teradin again.
So there you have it. Basically, the Lamorn tried their best to avoid destruction. The entire way that Viros, the planet, was sustaining life was already very dangerous in the first place, but they were trying their best to make the planet better for their species and for everything on it. And especially with the green rain, which then caused their own kind to turn into the Grievers, because they were trying to make them all have psychic abilities, and the green rain from the crystals basically backfired and turned them all into these vicious creatures that were then determined to destroy the ones that did it to them. And at that point, there was nothing the Lamorn could do but pretty much either leave or try to find a way to save the planet in some way, or move to a different planet, which is what their goal was. So all those Grievers that you come in contact with, that you fight in the game in Metroid Prime 4, those are actually the Lamorn, the citizens, the regular people of the species who did not have psychic abilities. The 13 Lamorn who had psychic abilities naturally were trying to artificially give them to the others, and it definitely did not work out in their favor. Pretty much one tragedy after another, and it got way out of hand, and things had to come to an end, and the planet was abandoned. So now we come to the final battle with Sylux, the ending and the spoilers and everything like that. This ending makes a lot of sense, but only if you are able to actually see the extended version with Sylux. And unfortunately, you have to get 100% scans on that, which I did not do. But thanks to YouTube, I was able to capture this footage and share it with you guys anyway, because I wanted to know the full extent and detail of the ending, and I don't want to have to buy the amiibo to see it, of course, because they do have it locked behind an amiibo. If you purchase the Sylux amiibo, you will get access to this extra footage that shows the ending for Sylux. It is very interesting because now we know why Sylux hates Samus and why Sylux hates the Federation. So basically at the end here, you see the fruit of your labor. The big golem mech is put together, all the mech parts that you found. They're able to break through the force field of Colonel Tower, and the whole team's able to get up there, finally put the keys all together, and then they're about to escape. And then Sylux comes and fights the entire group. Then you have to go about trying to heal everyone with your psychic abilities, because a lot of people are going to be getting killed pretty much or down for the count, and you have the ability to heal them with your psychic abilities. That you're trying to make sure not everybody dies and you keep them healed while also giving damage to Sylux. And then Sylux gets damaged just enough, and then it opens up a black hole, and then the black hole creates a wormhole. Now there's theories, of course, in science fiction that sometimes black holes can create wormholes, which would also enable you to travel long distances, because it does appear that Viros is actually a different planet than Tanimar, at least according to what it looks like on the map that Myles McKenzie shows as far as the destination where they're going to travel. He's pointing to a different planet, which is Tanimar, and a different planet on the display, which is Viros. So it does not appear to be that this is back in the past. This looks like it is actually in the present, and the artifact is the Lamorn teleportation device that the Galactic Federation discovered, and it turns out that probably those 12 others that were going out searching for the Chosen One likely died a long time before, and they were never found, but the teleportation device was, and then Sylux trying to get it with control of the space pirates, helping him out. But you don't see any more space pirates at all for the rest of the game. You only see Sylux appear every so often. From his green black hole effect that he creates, he's able to warp in there and fight Samus, which is very suspicious, and it's never really explained why he's doing that. He takes Samus with him, and then you fight Sylux 1v1, and finally when you do beat Sylux at that point, you're teleported back to the group, and then the group gets attacked one more time, trying to escape with Samus as they activate the master teleporter. And then to buy Samus time, they all stay with Sylux and get trapped on Viros while Samus gets teleported back to Tanimar, supposedly. It doesn't say directly that's Tanimar, but it looks like Tanimar, the same rubble and everything. And then Samus plants the memory fruit, leaving the legacy behind of the Lamorn. And if you get the 100% scans and best ending, you will in fact see Samus's face. It shows the emotional toll and emotional connection that Samus had with the Federation officers, especially with Reger Tokabi, who gave her that pendant as a special like good luck charm or something to watch over her. They did a fantastic job on her face there. Obviously this is pre-rendered stuff, but they did a great job on Samus's face. I really do wish that she would have said something in the game at least. Man, that face and the detail they put in it was fantastic. But that's not all. What about the motivation for Sylux as far as why he hates Samus and the Federation? Well, if you have the amiibo, you can access the special extra footage for the backstory of Sylux and what he was before he became what he looks like now in the game. So take a look at this.
I've commanded your troops to hold your position. I've confirmed the pirates' new weapon, if I can seize it. No. I've dispatched Samus's team. Await their arrival and join forces.
Yes, sir. Orders. Sir, proceed as planned.
Get me that weapon.
So as we can see from the footage, the reason why Sylux hates Samus and the Federation is because basically he had the wrong motivations as a Federation officer. It looked like he was the one in charge of his squad. He was ordered to stand down and not get the special weapon that the space pirates were developing and having there. And then Samus came in and destroyed it. And then he got injured in the process. And if you take a look at that explosion, it looks like the similar type of explosion that happened with the Lamorn teleportation device, which was the artifact in the beginning of the game. So if it was a similar type of technology, then it's possible, this is just speculation on my part, it's possible that the space pirates found the Lamorn teleportation device first, and then Samus came and destroyed the ship that was using that technology from the space pirates, and likely what was left over could have been the Lamorn teleportation device itself. And then the Federation went and took it to Tanimar for research. And then with his entire team killed, with Sylux surviving, and then Samus came up to him and said, "Hey, take my hand." And he swatted her away, very upset, and it looked like he was injured, almost like a Darth Vader type of moment. So he looks like it's filled with rage and motivation to get that power that he was seeking. It does look like the Lamorn teleportation device was probably what it was that he was after since that time, even then, before Metroid Prime 3, for him to turn into Sylux. But it looks like that is the case. It looks like the pirates had technology that was from the Lamorn teleportation device, maybe constructed from it, with that big ship that they had. And then Sylux saw what it was, and he wanted to get it for himself. Didn't work out for him. He got injured. His entire team was killed. And then he came back later for where the device was then being researched. Samus blocked it again, causing him to be even more angry, tried to shoot Samus out of the way. Instead, he shot the artifact, and then everyone was transported away. And then we had the events of Metroid Prime 4. So that leaves us with almost a cliffhanger, so to speak, for what happens to Sylux and the rest of the Federation group that you left behind on Viros. Are they still there? Are they holding Sylux back? Does Sylux get away? We simply don't know yet, and we may not know until Metroid Prime 5. It does leave it open for Metroid Prime 5, much more so, I would say, than Metroid Prime 3 did at the end of the game when they just showed Sylux chasing Samus in the ship. This leaves a ton of unanswered questions, but at least we do have an idea now as to why Sylux hates Samus, and I think it's a really good story. So definitely some key parallels there with Sylux and Samus being like opposites of each other. You can kind of see that here with the extra footage that's provided for Sylux's backstory. I think it's very key information to see, and it does really elevate the story of the game a lot higher, I would say, than any other Metroid Prime game, like easily. I think they did a fantastic job in comparison to the other Metroid Prime games in terms of the story. If you're just comparing this game to other modern games, of course, it's not going to be anywhere near as good, but this is a Metroid Prime game. This is a one-of-a-kind type of game, and that applies to pretty much every aspect of the game. The way it's designed, you simply do not play games like this anymore in 2025. A lot of games these days are following the same type of tropes, but Metroid Prime has always been a thing of its own, and this game, Metroid Prime 4, is no different. I absolutely loved Metroid Prime 4. So, where does it stand in the lineage and history with the Metroid Prime trilogy? In terms of storytelling, it's the best in the series. In terms of music, I think it might just be the best in the series, mainly because there's so many amazing music tracks in this game. There's more amazing music tracks in Metroid Prime 4 than there are in Metroid Prime 1 and Metroid Prime 2 and Metroid Prime 3. There's just more of them. Every single musical track in Metroid Prime 4 they're all bangers. There's like not a bad track in the entire game. So it's very difficult for me not to say that Metroid Prime 4 has the best music in the series, because for me, it pretty much is the best. There's so much great stuff there. I know that's saying a lot, but like that's just my feeling at this moment. And it definitely has the best gameplay of the series as far as like controls are concerned, how the game feels, how the game controls. All the animation of Samus so smooth and connecting for all the moves that she does are just incredibly good. By far the best best graphics in the series, easily. Most consistent, best boss designs of the series, I would say yes. Granted, for bosses like Quadraxis in Metroid Prime 2, that's a very, very cool boss, but consistency of how great the bosses are and how fun they are and how well they're designed in Metroid Prime 4, I would say is better than any Metroid Prime game, okay? So yeah, you have lots of like best ofs in Metroid Prime 4, but the gameplay aspect of Viola in the desert area of Soul Valley simply just doesn't wow you as much as the rest of the gameplay does. There's nothing really wrong with it on its own merits, I would say, though. I had a lot of fun with that. But in terms of comparing it to the rest of the game, it is definitely the worst aspect of the game, even though I did enjoy this aspect of the game. I would say for me, the segments in Soul Valley are good, but they're not great. Okay, but they're definitely not bad or terrible. For example, I was able to enjoy my time there, and in fact, I wanted to go back and do more. In terms of actual suit upgrades, I would say it's not quite as good as some of the other Metroid Prime games, like Metroid Prime 2, for example, because there's no screw attack in this game. Metroid Prime 2 did have a screw attack, and it had power bombs. So I think I would give the edge to Metroid Prime 2 for suit upgrades, and visors were better in Metroid Prime 2. Obviously, in Metroid Prime 4, there's only one extra visor to use, but you do have all these other abilities with the psychic abilities too, so it's not exactly the same type of experience to judge it by for the suit upgrades, because they have different abilities you do with the psychic abilities through the psychic visor. But I do think Metroid Prime 2 had the better suit ability upgrades than Metroid Prime 4 overall, I would say. I still think Metroid Prime 2 has the best looking suit in the entire 4 games. For me, again, this is just my opinion. But I will admit, I really, really like the Legacy suit in Metroid Prime 4, and I really, really like the Viola suit. The red Viola suit in Metroid Prime 4 looks fantastic. It has a very shiny, nice look to it. I think it looks very sleek, very stylish, fits in really nicely with Viola, the bike. I think it looks really, really good together. So yeah, fantastic suit, but I still would give the edge to Metroid Prime 2 for how good those suits look, for me personally. Where would I rank Metroid Prime 4 in relation to Metroid Prime 1, 2, and 3? This is a very, very hard question, guys, but I'm going to try to give you an answer. Metroid Prime 4 is better than Metroid Prime 3. I think that's a really easy one for me. And I've talked about my issues with Metroid Prime 3 because we played all 3 games in November of 2025, just last month. I think quite possibly Metroid Prime 4 is actually better than Metroid Prime 2. Because Metroid Prime 2 does have some consistency issues in the beginning of the game, even though it's a fantastic game. Metroid Prime 4 doesn't have that problem. It does have the open world that some people have an issue with, being kind of let down by that for some people. Very, very little for me compared to the blandness of Agon Waits in Metroid Prime 2. I do have to give Metroid Prime 4, I think, a higher ranking than Metroid Prime 2, but Metroid Prime 1 is pretty much the quintessential Metroid Prime experience. It's the game that started it all, and it's the most consistent, perfect flowing game of the entire series, I would say. There's no like issue with the game faltering at all at any point. The game is a perfect 10 out of 10. Metroid Prime 1 is just so expertly made, it's really hard to top that one. More so the letdown of the high from Volt Forge, going from that down to the quietness of Soul Valley. I thought that particular part of the game, that transition part, was the only part where I faltered a bit with Metroid Prime 4, but right after that, pretty much started really having a lot of fun and became a non-issue. Metroid Prime 4, amazing, amazing game. All right, guys, thank you so much for this adventure with Metroid Prime 4 that we've had for many years now, ever since it was announced in 2017 to now, when it finally has been released. We beat the game and reviewed the game. Wow. Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. Thank you so much for your support. I'll talk to you very soon in the next video. Have a great day.